Wow, that's great that the music decided not to actually play. Fantastic. Ah, the console arcs that we haven't looked at yet. Okay. That's where they're from. Okay. I need to go do one more thing, so hopefully the music will actually play this time. I just came in to set my drink down. But I've got one thing I have to attend to. I will be right back. It may be about 10 minutes at most, because it involves we're trying to make some vanilla syrup for like milk and such, since they don't seem to actually be interested in selling any of it for under ludicrous amounts of money around here. And my daughter likes vanilla, so we're trying to make some vanilla syrup. It doesn't take very long, but I need to at least get her started on it. So I will be back in a second. Please, music. Completely on her own. She decided she wants to do it completely on her own, so more power to her. No. Cup decided to drip on me. Anyway, waking up in a cheap hotel in the city was by no means pleasant. I remembered even during the long camping trips we had during grade school, I wanted to get home quickly, counting out the days left on my fingers. Waking up this morning, I was somehow reminded of that. Was it a need to be with my wife when she gave birth? A particular type of homesickness? As a productive member of society, as a public servant bound to fulfill his duties, it was pathetic indeed. Those negative emotions faded as I downed my breakfast, which was surprisingly not half bad. The meeting with the informant that Oishi had provided would be tonight. Until then, I couldn't just be lazing around. The informant's gonna be, god dang, type A or somebody, isn't it? Just watch. The Onagafuchi Defense Alliance was protesting the dam's construction in various ways. Included in this was a strategy for improving public relations, which could be categorized into two major forms: combative and peaceful. In regards to the former, as an attempt to keep law enforcement in check, they appealed to the public's sympathy by highlighting the oppressive and inhumane tactics of the police and the brutality of the riot squads. The latter, peaceful route, stressed how precious the natural surroundings of Hinamizawa was, seeking people who would oppose the dam on environmental grounds. As part of that, the village of Hinamizawa had invited celebrated zoologists and botanists, as well as environmental groups, to advertise the nature surrounding the town. According to the news, in recent years there had been a group calling itself Hinamizawa Nature Watching, setting up free sightseeing tours. I would have liked to have taken advantage of the opportunity, but when I called the village administrative offices, they responded it was too late to put in an application for the tour, and they were still undecided as to when they'd be doing another one.
そうですか。次回の募集はありませんか。残念です。
あんた、環境保護団体さんですか？それとも雑誌さんの人？
いえ、個人です。
個人？観光ですかね？
観光みたいなものです。美しい自然を写真に残すのが趣味なんで。
Hobby to take pictures.
雑誌でとても貴重な自然が残っていると読んだので楽しみにしていたのですが。
I knew there was an article that had something like that written in it, but I hadn't actually read it. Was it this ad-lib lie not going to work? However, contrary to my expectations, the person I was speaking to laughed happily.
ならあんた、検査来なさい。村はちょいと慌ただしいけど、歓迎しますよ。
ぜひそうさせていただきます。ありがとうございます。
It begins.
あんた、明日は何ですか？お車？もしそうだったら、先にナンバーを聞いておきますよ。台湾ないんですがね。
This was probably related to the checkpoint they'd set up on the way to the village. If I didn't give them my license plate number, I'd most likely be hindered in various ways. I thought about using the car I'd borrowed from the prefecture, but I was lost on whether or not it was okay to tell them that plate number. If the Onogafuchi Defense Alliance was behind this incident, there was no guarantee they wouldn't be able to find out who I was. So I had to play it safe, so I elected to refrain from using the car.
いえ、実は車ではないんです。バスか何かがあれば、それで行きたいのですが。
バスならありますよ。もうすぐ廃線になってますそうですがね。そんでいらっしゃい。
How soon?
沖宮の駅から出ますよ。
ありがとうございます。探してみることにします。
ほんと、いつ来ます？Hinamizawaさん、初めての土地じゃ、いろいろとご不安でしょう。教えてくれりゃ、誰か行かせていろいろご案内させますよ。
そんな、そこまでしていただくのは申し訳ないです。
気にせんでください。これも村の自然さ守るための PR なんですから。
Judging by what I saw at the checkpoint, the villagers were, at the very least, wary of outsiders. That's why in order to move in and out of the village freely, I had to travel with somebody like Wishi, or side with the dam protests. Having an interest in the natural environment surrounding the village sided the peaceful type of PR that the village was using. I was a bit against having a watchdog attached to me, but that might actually work out in my favor. The entire village was fired up about the dam protests, so I might be lucky enough to hear some especially candid opinions from the residents. Given that, there was no real reason for me to refuse their offer.
本当によろしいのでしょうか。でしたら本当に助かります。
After that, I was shown the bus schedule and directed to which bus I should get on. Somebody would come and meet me at the bus stop in the village. After showing me around a spot I'd taken interest in, there was no doubt they'd bring me to somewhere like an anti-dam information center. Then, over a cup of tea, they tried to indoctrinate me into accepting their principles and beliefs. Well, if that was their aim, there'd be a lot less freebies involved. The world is about give and take, after all. I couldn't be going in the suit. Pulled some plain clothes out of my travel case and changed into something more casual. After that, after calming down by watching some local television, I left the hotel and set out for Okonomiya Station. The bus route that I was told would soon be discontinued certainly didn't look that way. There was more than enough trips on the schedule, and the number of passengers was by no means sparse. It was the main link to Okonomiya, the only town in the area. The types of passengers that stood out were older folk who didn't look like they could drive and housewives who didn't seem like they had a license. If the area was submerged at the bottom of the lake, it wouldn't matter if there was a bus route. That's why it was going to be discontinued, in the unnatural scheme of things. I could catch a glimpse of the government's intent in cutting off their means of transportation to bully the village into emptying out sooner. It makes sense. According to the documents, talks between the Ministry of Construction and the locals broke down quite early. The government decided from the start to take an aggressive stance on the matter. It was like the fairy tale with the north wind and the sun trying to get the traveler to remove his cloak. Even their bullying had meaning to it. The reason why the Onogafuchi Defense Alliance resisted so violently was because the government was doing unseemly things like that. I was somebody who lived in Tokyo, so for a village or two out in the boonies like this to be submerged didn't seem like a big deal. But I guess for somebody actually living here, it would be a vitally huge problem. You think? This route will be discontinued at the end of this financial year. Thank you for your patronage up to this point. We look forward to your continued patronage on our other lines. Okonomiya Transportation. Gazing lazily at the number of discontinued service the notice of discontinued service posted inside the bus, I counted down the number of stops until the designated one. Along the way, we passed through the checkpoint before without stopping. They knew what time the bus was coming, so they'd opened up the barricade ahead of time. From here on out was enemy territory. My palms at some point had become coated in a thin film of sweat.
浮田水道前へ、浮田水道前へ、お降りの方はいらっしゃいませんか?
I hurriedly pressed the stop request button as the designated stop was announced. For none of the numerous passengers who were getting off here meant that it must be quite a remote place. In actuality, the stop I got off at was so abnormally run down that I could tell it was barely used. As soon as I stepped out, an intense atmosphere completely different from the interior of the bus assailed my body. Right now, Oishi or Motodai weren't beside me. That's right, at present, I was alone in the middle of enemy territory. My adversaries probably thought I was just an ordinary tourist, but that was nothing more than a ruse. But if by some mistake my true identity was to be exposed, it brought back the terrifying words I'd heard at the prefectural office, that if somebody was attacked in Hinamizawa with a knife, there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. I didn't seem suspicious, did I? My clothing was currently casual. It was exactly the type of clothing that a city slicker that viewed the countryside as a wholesome getaway would wear. A camera, and a knapsack. Inside were various things needed for hiking. It was still only June, but maybe it was unusual, but the sun was shining down like it was already the middle of summer. The fact that I didn't bring a hat must seem odd. Nah, it wasn't something to be concerned about. That's right, I was just a normal tourist. Just normal. Was there anything suspicious about me? Asking that, I turned around to look at the bus that was departing. All the passengers in the window were staring down at me, silently. They were staring right at me, as if they had seen through my proud little outfit. Just staring, looking down on me. Countless stares rained down like needles on me from the windows opened out to air the bus. What the heck is that? I mean, it's something. All that rained down were stares. None of them were saying a word, but all the more. Their silent stares told me more than a million words could. Hurry up and go back to Tokyo, you outsider.
私は
There was no reason for me to speak. My quiet voice was drowned out by the sound of the engine. The bus, as if to torment me, set out slowly, and after doing more than enough to intimidate me, sped off. A thin film of sweat began to rise from my entire body. According to the documents, it was a village that seemed wary of outsiders. Its population was small as well. If they saw an unfamiliar face, they would be quick to identify that face as an outsider. On top of that, nobody else had gotten off at this stop. It was a bus stop that they normally just passed on by. Somebody actually getting off there was no doubt that had drawn some attention. But this wasn't a slip-up. They were the ones who directed me to get off at this stop. There was nothing to worry about. I knew that I was just nervous since this was my first undercover assignment. My more seasoned colleagues referred to us as the new generation that didn't know how to lose their cool. But that wasn't true at all. In order to calm my breathing down, I exhaled the unpleasant air residing in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't help but pray that my apprehensions would disappear like the white clouds of exhaust expelled from the bus. There was a small shed there to serve as shelter if it rained, and it was there I decided to wait. Inside the shed, one wall was plastered with posters advertising the dam opposition efforts. It was like the heartfelt screams of the villagers were recorded on that wall. Inside that shelter, I felt an inexplicable pressure. It wasn't like I had any real relation to the dam project, but it still made me feel hesitant about being inside there. That was just how filled with the force of denial that space was. And inside that uneasy space was a girl. Hello, Rika. Inside that shed, covered in words written in broad brushstrokes berating the policies regarding the dam and calling for action, there was a girl sitting there with a drowsy face as if half asleep. The two images clashed so much that I could only stand there dumbfounded for a moment, trapped in such a surreal environment. Let's see something. If I stepped inside, who knew what kind of oafish noises I would accidentally make? I couldn't be disturbing this girl's slumber like that. Having thought this, I gave up on entering the shed. It was just a sleeping kid, so why was I so worked up about it? Finally, I realized. This girl, to us, as a married couple, was the very image of our ideal child. Is it P? Okay. Even after numerous explanations at the hospital, we didn't know for sure what our child's gender was. Whether we could tell if they were a boy or a girl was, in the end, depending on whether or not we could get an image of their genitalia. There was, of course, no guarantee that it was a girl, but with things the way they were, the possibility was high. Even so, Yuki had been saying that the chances that it was a boy or girl were even. But in my heart, I'd already decided that their coming child was a girl. Since the day I decided that until now, it was so fun to imagine how our child would grow up that I couldn't help myself. Amongst those numerous imagined forms, the ones I thought to be the most ideal had materialized right in front of me. Of course, a little bit was due to the circumstances. In my ideal image, her hair would be on the short side. The girl in front of me, though, had long hair. It was almost as if somebody had taken my ideal and made some small adjustments. It certainly wasn't something unpleasant. Even so, I felt like I was sullying her just by looking at her like that. She had an immaculate, a divine air about her. The girl with an angelic smile, with a yawn wide enough you could see her molars, woke up all of a sudden. I didn't mean to peep, but locking eyes with a girl who had just woken up like this somehow made me feel like I was playing a prank with her. Yeah, someone is not focused on the mission. I wasn't doing anything shady, but I became flustered. The girl spoke. No, cried out?
Me.
Oh, we don't get Nipa, but we get Meep. Meep? Like that character on the show with the puppets. With the orange hair? I thought that was just one of those greetings kids do. So in order to prove I wasn't a suspicious person, I responded in kind.
Me.
Me.
Me?
What we're beeping. Meep, meep. The girl stared at me dubiously with the doll-like expression. Cute, but cold and hard to read. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. There was, after all, an unfamiliar man right in front of her when she woke up, who responded with Meep when she said the same. Suspicious. She definitely thought I was suspicious.
Me.
Me?
We got a grown man meeping here. We were both at a total loss for words. Now, the only one lost was me. The girl in front of me, as if inquiring about my motives, stared at me intently. In this silence, I felt like I was the one who had to say something first. Damn it, this girl was way better at interrogating somebody than Uishi.
怪しいものじゃないんだ。私は
There's your Nipa! So far we've gotten 2 words out of Rika.
ニパ
What I could only have described as a cold expression suddenly blossomed into a smile, one that soon infected me. You might be familiar with the term angelic smile. To me, it was like the phrase was created just to describe the smile she gave me. The girl smiling while saying Nipa probably wanted me to return the favor in kind. That's right, this was a kid's form of communication. Having the other person emulate what you just did was a rudimentary form of mutual understanding.
ニパ
The voice actor's doing a good job of sounding incredibly pained while saying this, too. It was a beautiful afternoon in the early summer. What was I doing?
ニパ
Well, whatever. This was interesting in its own way. If making somebody happy with just a smile was the work of angels, then this girl was definitely one of them. I couldn't help but pray that my own child, who was soon to be born, would grow up to be like this girl. I'm letting that one soak in. I'm letting that one soak in. That strangely gentle moment was finally brought to an end by the arrival of a car. An older person waved at me from the driver's seat, a dry smile plastered on their face.
どうも、こんにちは。遅れて申し訳ないことです。昨日お電話くださった観光の方ですかね。
あ、はい。
お待たせして申し訳ねえ。いや、野良でちょいと遅れましてね。知ったのとお乗りくださいな。天気もまんた崩れそうだから、ちゃけちゃけご案内しますよ。
天気ですか？
ああ、ここいらは崩れると早いよ。今日も夕立になるかもな。そうなったら、ほんと写真さ撮るところじゃなくなるでしょ。ほら、乗って乗って。
Turning around, the girl was standing right behind me with an intrigued expression. Her body language somehow reminded me of a stray cat that followed you around after you played with it a little. So charming.
あれ、リカちゃまじゃねえですか。ありがたや、ありがたや。
A A girl named Rika with an immaculate smile and an old man praising her while rubbing prayer beads in his hands. It was a rather mysterious sight to behold. So the girl turns her face at me, tilting her head a little in a cutesy manner. After seeing that, the elder introduces me as a tourist who came to sightsee Hinamizawa.
村を観光したい若者なのです。
Oh, we finally got other words out of her. Personal space! The girl, Rika-chan, said that with a smile as she clung onto my arm.
まあね。この村の自然がとても貴重だと聞いたんで、ぜひカメラに収めたいと思ったんだよ。私はこう見えても、とっても写真撮影が好きでね。
So hang on. What are the odds that my joking comment from earlier about this guy being coach, just because it's an adult we don't know much about, what are the odds that this guy actually takes over the role of... Oh, God. What if this guy is our photographer asshole? I was joking earlier. Yeah. What if this guy is photographer asshole? It would explain why he keeps dying so fast.
富竹2号なのです。
Oh, Tomotaki's already exists. Okay. Never mind.
富竹？
牧野、僕も一緒に行ってはいけませんですか？
Yeah, the game made the joke for me, yes.
そんなレカちゃまが来ても面白いことなんか何もないですよ。レカちゃまは境内でマリア遊びでもしててくださいな。
A distinctly displeased expression creeped across Rika-chan's face. Being able to show one's emotions honestly on their faces was a privilege young children had. No, it is not. There's no dating involved whatsoever. But there is murder. More in Chapter 3 than the others, you know. But we'll see what Chapter 4 has to offer.
もしお差し支えなければ、この子も連れて行ってあげてください。
When I said those helpful words, another smile spread across Rika-chan's face with another nipa as she clung to me again. Ah, not bad at all. I want this girl to call me Papa. Oh God, my head. This hurts, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, cat. What do you want? You just want to yell at me? It's okay. Even the cat disagrees, yes. No, father, dad, daddy. God, depending on how you read it, that line could be read so many terrible ways. What am I doing? That's a good question. Keep thinking along the lines of constantly thinking about what you're doing here, dude. Ever since I met this girl, I was completely off my game. Just calm down.
風なかんと。レカちゃまはダメだ言うても聞かんしな。知ったらんと、おのれくだせ。
Yeah, I'll go with that one.
さあさあ、リカちゃまも。
The old man descended on the driver's seat and opened up the sliding door of the van, which had Onagafuchi Alliance Town Council stenciled on the side. Rika-chan brushed me aside, dove into a seat, began bouncing around right away. It seemed like she was thoroughly enjoying the bouncy springs.
かんれ、リカちゃま。
If you think you're about to die, what do you think I'm doing?
そんじゃお客さんが座れねえですよ。やだ、こら、リカちゃま。
Huh, girls are nice. I wonder if my child will play around like this too. No, 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 no. It was written in that guide to raising a child that you shouldn't dote on them. Kids are kids. If you don't raise them strictly without spoiling them.
ふかふかでバインバインでニパー。
Yeah, I prefer that one.
ニパ
God damn it, dude, stop that! It's getting creepy. I am definitely going to be a terrible father. It was decided that I would be a doting parent before my child was even born.
そんじゃお客さん、風景の綺麗そうなとこで適当にご案内しますよ。お昼は食べましたかいね。
ー。ええ。ホテルで軽食を。
そんですか。では参りましょうかね。
ひなみざわ観光に出発なのですよ。わーいなのです。
Yeah, they totally trust you now. You're under the same thrall about Rika-chan that every other adult is.
君はリカちゃんでいいのかい？
そうなのですよ。フルでリカと言いますです。もう繰り上がりの足し算とかもできますですよ。
ああ、そうなの。それはすごいな。
Yeah.
小指とかは折ってませんですよ。ちゃんと暗算でできますですよ。
The way she insisted upon that was just too cute. At some point, the nervousness I had about being alone in enemy territory had evaporated like it was never there at all. I had to be at least a little thankful that I met this girl.
じゃあ出発しましょうかいね。南沢大自然ウォッチング。
The old man stepped on the gas with a great deal of gusto. The music. I'm not advancing anything here. It's just moving that all by itself. Uh-huh. Oh, that's a tour. And this definitely one of the weirdest PowerPoint presentations. This music just does not fit Hinamizawa. Not in any timeline. I don't know if I like the music or not. I really don't. Anyway, the old man, who was apparently named Makino, was he the same Makino that was listed as the auditor of the Onagapuchi Defense Alliance? Showed me around places that were all breathtaking. Even though I wasn't really here for sightseeing, I couldn't help but be impressed. First of all, this was different from the simple scenery of a city. The scenery of a charming village like this, no matter how mundane it seemed to the villagers, had a tranquil appeal to it. Deus Ex Machina. Deus Ex Rika at this point. At first, I was only releasing the shutter as part of my tourist act, but midway through, I found myself taking pictures out of pure interest. Tourist traps had their own unique allure to them, but there was nothing like that here. I was especially captivated by the unspoiled nature of the place. If there wasn't that whole uproar over the dam, I would want to bring Yuki here with me some other time. I wanted her to breathe in this fresh air as well as show her this rejuvenating, verdant scenery.
こんなのが面白いのですか？赤坂は変な人なのです。
いや、こういう円筒状の郵便ポストなんて今はとても貴重だよ。どことなく漂うノスタルジックな雰囲気は渋いと思わないかな。
ひなみざわは楽しいですか？
ああ、楽しいよ。退院したらぜひ家内を連れてもう一度来たいよ。その時には生まれている子供も一緒にね。
Huh. I'm not so sure he should have mentioned that he has a pregnant wife back at home that isn't with him.
今は出産を控えて入院しているんだ。
I'm not so sure you should have mentioned that because they're going to ask why you aren't there with her.
予定日がもうすぐでね。君みたいな可愛い女の子だといいんだけど。
お客前はもうすぐおめでたですかいね。そんないけねえよ。
Yeah, he kind of blew his cover a little bit here.
奥さん放り出してこんなとこに遊びに来てちゃ。
I was momentarily at a loss for words after saying the stupidest possible thing in this situation. Short of, you know, I'm really with the police, right? It was exactly how Makino said. There was no good reason for a man who was waiting for his wife to give birth to be playing around idly in this place. Did I slip up?
まあ
I don't think he has any guard anymore.
ひなみ沢への旅行は前々からの予定だったんで、妻の家族が付き添ってくれているから大丈夫だし。
こんなに前から予定してたんなら大自然ウォッチング。ましかね間に合わんとかいね。いやそんだったらこんな窮屈な思いさせんと綺麗な観光バスで回れたのに。
It didn't seem if Makino was actually digging for anything. But if this conversation continued any longer, it could put some unexpected holes in my cover. I halted the conversation by pretending to take another picture.
じゃあ最後の一番景色のいいとこさ案内しましょうかね。
It was slightly before evening. The sun was still burning brightly, but a cool breeze had begun to mix itself into the air. It seemed my exploration of Hinamizawa with Rika-chan was just about done.
一番景色のいいところですか？
そんなリカちゃま、境内からの景色さを置いて他にはありませんやね。
Hearing that, Rika-chan smiled even more.
では赤坂を僕のお家へご招待なのです。
リカちゃんのお家って
神社ですよ。古で神社。高台にありましてね。景色さ見られるんですよ。
フルデ神社。
The girl who called Furude Shrine her home, Rika. If I remembered her correctly, her full name was Rika Furude. And Furude was, that's right, one of the three families. Even if the Sonozaki family is said to hold all the actual power, it was still one of the old houses that held some authority. No, more important than that right now was Furude Shrine. If I remembered correctly, Oishi had told me, within the grounds of Furude Shrine, there were the offices of the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance. And since the land around Furude Shrine were private property, the police couldn't set foot there heedlessly. Furude Shrine, where even Oishi couldn't simply set foot into. The main base of operations for the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance. I had been given the unexpected opportunity to enter there. I couldn't have asked for more.
楽しみです。ぜひお願いします。
じゃあ酒々参りましょうかね。
Yeah, this is going way too smoothly. But then again, he isn't actually being shown anything of consequence except scenery.
天気も少し怪しいですからな。
Yet. The sky had suddenly become overcast. It wouldn't be odd if it started raining soon. The cicadas, as if trying to finish out their daily allotment of chirps before the evening, cried out more fervently. It's all going way too smoothly.